Last week I made a game called Galactic Mission, and here is how it went. So this game wasn't made for any public game jam, it's kind of like my own personal game jam. So what I'm going to be doing is making a 1-week game every month. So this is pretty much the idea I had when coming up with the game idea. So I didn't want it to be a platformer, so I wanted it to be a top-down shooter, and I wanted it to be a safe zone, and then that's how Galactic Mission, the idea, was made. So the gameplay is going to consist of 2 modes. The default mode, where you can beat in about 5 minutes, and if you've beaten that, you can play the endless mode, where endless swarms of enemies come in and you have to beat them all. So while the endless mode is being pretty fun, the game was still missing a massive chunk of potential. So this is when I took in the main game and I added lots of features like the safe zone, which we'll get into later. So this is how the safe zone works. So pretty much if you're in this circle, you are safe, but when you leave the circle, you have a timer, and then when that timer gets to 0, you take damage. Well, then you might be asking, what's the actual point of the game if you're just restricted to this tiny zone and you can't go out far? That is when the shop system takes place. So you can destroy rocks or enemies to get coins, which are displayed in the top right corner. Then when you hit the E button, you get a range of different abilities, and this ability will move the safe zone. So if we buy it, the safe zone starts to move, and if we get this one, it gives us more time when we are not inside the safe zone. So for example, now I have 5 seconds instead of the previous 2 seconds. So obviously just shooting rocks would get really boring really fast. So then I added enemies into the game. So we've got this easy enemy first, where you just have to dodge its projectiles and shoot back. And enemies also give you currency. So say you take damage, you can get this ability, which will give you 1 more health, or that one, which I can't get, but it gives you another heart. So then another thing I added is I started to force the player to go outside the safe zone, so they get used to the not safe mechanic. So for example here, you have to go around that little bit there to get round back into the safe zone. That's deliberately not very hard, just so the player actually knows what they're doing. So later on in the game, I can make going outside the safe zone a lot harder. So then I added more enemies, for example this ghost. Now this ghost is very similar to the other enemy, but its projectiles just move a lot faster and the ghost itself moves a lot faster. So a thing I would have liked to improve before releasing the game was maybe make a bigger variety of enemies. At the moment there's only 3 and 2 are practically the same. Third enemy is here, it's this little purple guy. So it's still pretty basic AI, but it's very different to the other enemies, so I'm quite happy with that enemy. So another small thing I added was this fence. So the fence just blocks your projectiles and the enemy projectiles. So if I can get it into a position where the projectile would be blocked, like that, for example. So I was thinking of maybe making it so you could shoot past the fences, but then all you have to do is position yourself correctly and then you can just shoot the enemy through the fence. So in the end I decided to make the fences block both the player and the enemy projectiles. So it's just a small thing, but it adds quite a lot to the gameplay. So the final cutscene, what does it look like? Well, actually I'm not going to show you in this video because I don't want to spoil everything in the game. The cutscene's very short, only about 2 seconds long, but I want to have something that you can play the game for, so I'm not going to show you the cutscene in this video. So Juice is really important for top-down shooters, especially. It's what happens, like all the effects. So let's see what the effects look like. So the effects are a very big part of the game. A lot of them you don't even notice. For example, the white flashing at the end of the bullet. and other things like the smoke or just the absolute spam of particle effects. I really don't think there's such thing of spam as particle effects, to be completely honest. The more particle effects, the better in pretty much all cases. So I really tried to make the game as juicy as possible. So the art in this game is very simple because I'm not used to the top-down perspective. So the hardest part about the art for me was making so many different frames, because you need an idle frame for the facing down, a run frame for the facing down, an idle frame for the facing right, a run frame for the facing right, and so on. So I only made a 4-directional character, but if I made an 8-directional character I would need twice as many sprites as this. So that is why the player character was the hardest to make. So also I decided to make the player character quite simple. So I didn't make arms on the player character, instead I put simple arms onto the gun. I wanted to make the gun look too big for the character because I thought it gives a funny style. So I wanted to keep the tile set simple because once again I've never made a top-down tile set before. So all it is this solid green colour with a bit of blue surrounding the outside with some highlights. So what you see on the screen are the only decorations used in the entire game. So the game does look pretty simple, but I think these decorations actually do quite a good job showing us how simple they are. So the major thing I don't like about this game is there is no tutorial at all. Well, there's a kind of tutorial where it's like here and there's no enemies, so you're kind of free to run around, but there's nothing telling you what to do. And on the reviews on Newgrounds, people didn't really know what to do. They didn't know what the safe zone is. They walk outside it and then they start taking damage. I need to explain the shop more and shooting rocks, getting currency. So that's probably the main thing that I don't really like about this game. Another thing is a pretty major part of the game actually. Shooting rocks really isn't very interesting. Maybe I should have made more enemies instead of focusing on rocks more. Because let's face it, shooting static things that don't fight back or provide any challenge whatsoever really isn't very entertaining. Probably one of my favourite things about the game is actually endless mode. I think this provides challenge without having to wait for ages to actually find another enemy in the main story. Another thing I like is the shop system. But once again, not very many people even knew about the shop system because there is nowhere in the game that tells you press E to open the shop or something like that. But if you do discover the shop system, I think it is one of the best, if not the best parts of the game. So a thing this game taught me really well is the importance of sound. So on screen now you can see what the game's like without any sound. And now is the game with sound. Even just simple sound effects really do make a whole big difference. And yeah, that's about it for this video. Please play the game with the link in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.